The first sensation wasn't pain, though logic suggested it should have been. Instead, it was the peculiar feeling of floating in warm honey while someone played a crystalline symphony just outside the range of hearing. My consciousness drifted back slowly, like a deep-sea creature rising from oceanic depths, each layer of awareness bringing new mysteries. The air tasted different, cleaner somehow, with an almost metallic sweetness that made my lungs work harder than they should. When I finally managed to crack my eyelids open, the world that greeted me defied every expectation my earth-trained brain could muster. I was surrounded by walls that seemed to breathe, their surfaces shifting between deep purple and silver like living aurora. Above me, what I initially mistook for a ceiling revealed itself to be a vast window opening onto space itself, stars wheeling slowly in patterns I didn't recognize. The bed beneath me wasn't quite solid. It cradled my body with an intelligence that anticipated my every need, adjusting temperature and firmness with each heartbeat. "Your neural pathways are stabilizing faster than our models predicted," came a voice like wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. "Though you shouldn't be conscious yet." I turned toward the sound, my neck moving with surprising ease despite feeling like I'd been asleep for centuries. What I saw made my breath catch in ways that had nothing to do with the strange atmosphere. She stood beside a panel of flowing light, her back to me initially, but even in profile, she was extraordinary. Her skin held a luminescence that reminded me of moonlight on water, pale blue silver that seemed to generate its own soft radiance. When she turned to face me, I found myself staring into eyes the color of deep amethyst, multifaceted like cut gems, holding depths that suggested ancient wisdom. Her features were delicately beautiful, in a way that was almost but not quite human. Her cheekbones were higher, her jaw more refined, and along her temples ran intricate patterns that looked like silver tattoos, but glowed with their own inner light. Her hair moved as if underwater, flowing in impossible ways that defied gravity, each strand catching and reflecting the ambient light of the room. "Where?" I began, but my voice emerged as little more than a rasp. She moved toward me with fluid grace, her approach causing the walls around us to brighten slightly, as if responding to her presence. "You're safe," she said, and something in her tone made me believe it completely. "You're aboard the healing station Serenity's Edge, in orbit around the third moon of Kepler 442b. And names meant nothing to me, but the impossibility of the situation was starting to sink in. How long have I been unconscious?" She hesitated, her glowing markings pulsing slightly brighter. 17 days, Earth Standard. Your injuries were extensive. Memory came flooding back in fragments. The research vessel, Meridian. The solar flare that had knocked out our navigation systems. The asteroid field we'd stumbled into behind. The horrible grinding sound of metal being torn apart. The screaming alarms. The moment when the hull breach had sucked 3 of my crewmates into the void before the emergency barriers could engage. The others? I asked, though something in her expression already gave me the answer. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Your escape pod was the only one we detected. The others..." She trailed off, but I could feel in the silence. I closed my eyes, grief washing over me in waves. Jackson, who'd been planning to propose to his girlfriend when we returned. Maria, who'd spent every off-duty hour video calling her kids. Ben, who'd been so excited about the mineral samples we'd collected from the Outer Rim asteroids. All gone. "I know this is difficult," the alien healer said, her voice gentle but clinical. "But I need you to focus on your recovery. The trauma to your body was severe, and the integration process is still ongoing." Integration process? I opened my eyes to find her studying a holographic display that had materialized from nowhere, showing what looked like a 3-dimensional map of a human body, but not quite. There were additional systems I didn't recognize, glowing pathways that seemed to follow my nervous system but extended beyond it. Your life support pod was damaged during the crash, she explained, her fingers dancing through the hologram to highlight different areas. By the time we retrieved you, your cardiovascular system had failed. Your lungs were filled with coolant fluid, and you had suffered massive neural trauma. Traditional medical intervention would have been insufficient. I stared at the display, noting the foreign elements that seemed to be integrated throughout my body's systems. So you did what exactly? She turned to face me fully, and I could see uncertainty flickering in those remarkable eyes. We gave you a choice. Or rather, your unconscious mind made the choice for you. When our healers connected with your neural patterns to assess the damage, your psyche ... reached out. It accepted our offer of symbiotic healing. Symbiotic? The glowing pathways you see are biomechanical interfaces grown from our own cellular structure. They're repairing and supplementing your damaged organs while your body heals naturally. Eventually, they can be removed, but for now, they're the only thing keeping you alive. I tried to process this information, but it felt like trying to hold water in cupped hands. So I'm part alien now? Part Netherian, she corrected, and there was something almost shy in her voice when she said it. That's our species' name. And yes, in a sense, you carry part of my cellular matrix within you. It was ... necessary. The way she said it made me study her more carefully. There was something personal in her tone, something that went beyond professional. Medical detachment. Your cellular matrix specifically? Her markings flared brighter for a moment before she seemed to gain control of them. The healing process requires perfect compatibility. The biomechanical interfaces had to be grown from the genetic material of the primary healer. In cases of extensive trauma like yours, that means ... That means what? That means you're bonded to me until the healing is complete, she said quietly. The interfaces respond to my biorhythms, my emotional state, even my thoughts to some degree. It's why I haven't been able to leave this chamber since we began your treatment. I stared at her, pieces clicking into place. The fatigue in her eyes, the way the walls seemed to respond to her presence, the fact that she'd been here to greet me both times I'd awakened. How long does the healing process take? For injuries as severe as yours? She moved back to the holographic display, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. Anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on how well your body accepts the integration. 6 months to 2 years. Bonded to this beautiful, mysterious alien healer who had literally shared part of herself to keep me alive. The magnitude of what she'd sacrificed for a stranger hit me like a physical blow. Why? I asked. Why would you do that for someone you don't even know? She was quiet for a long moment, her attention seemingly focused on adjusting something in the holographic display. Finally, she spoke without looking at me. Because when our consciousness touched during the initial healing, I saw who you are. I saw your memories, your dreams, your hopes. I saw the way you stayed at the navigation console during the crash, trying to save your crewmates even when the hull was breaching around you. I saw the way you think about the people you care about, the way you find wonder in small things like sunrise over an alien world or the sound of rain on metal. She turned back to me, and her eyes held something that made my breath catch. I saw your heart, Marcus Hawley, and I couldn't let it stop beating. The fact that she knew my name, that she'd been inside my memories and dreams, should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt intimate in a way that scared and thrilled me simultaneously. Here was someone who knew me more completely than any human ever had, and she'd chosen to save me at tremendous personal cost. What's your name? I asked. She smiled then, the first truly unguarded expression I'd seen from her. Nix. My name is Nix. Well, Nix, I said, testing the sound of her name on my tongue and finding it perfect. Thank you for saving my life. Though I have to say, This might be the most complicated medical situation I've ever been in. Her laugh was like music, brightening the room and making her markings pulse in rhythm with the sound. Complicated is one way to put it. Though I should probably mention that there are some side effects to the bonding process that you should be aware of. More side effects? Beyond the glowing alien technology, keeping my organs functional? The neural link works both ways, she said, her cheeks taking on a slightly deeper blue tinge that I suspected might be the Netherian equivalent of blushing. Just as I can monitor your physical and emotional state, you may begin to sense aspects of mine. It's not uncommon for healing bonds to create unexpected forms of intimacy. I felt something stir in my chest that might have been the alien. Technology responding to my elevated heart rate, or might have been something else entirely. Unexpected intimacy? Shared dreams? Empathic connections? Sometimes even shared sensory experiences. She was definitely blushing now, her markings pulsing in patterns I was beginning to find hypnotic. I thought you should know, so you're prepared if ... when it happens. The implications hung in the air between us, like a bridge neither of us was quite ready to cross. Here we were, two beings from different species, different worlds, bound together by alien technology and circumstances neither of us had chosen. And yet, something was growing in the space between us, something that felt like the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. Well, I said finally, settling back into the impossibly comfortable bed and allowing myself to really look at her, this extraordinary being who had saved my life at the cost of her own freedom. I suppose if I'm going to be stuck somewhere for the next 6 months to 2 years, I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be than here with you. Her smile was radiant, lighting up the chamber and making the stars outside seem dim by comparison. And as I drifted toward sleep, lulled by the gentle humming of the healing station and the soft glow of Nix's presence, I found myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, this crash had brought me to exactly where I was supposed to be. The last thing I saw before dreams claimed me was Nix settling into a chair beside my bed, her hand moving to rest near mine on the bi-responsive surface, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her luminescent skin. In that moment, bonded together by alien technology and surrounded by the vast emptiness of space, I had never felt less alone. I woke to the sensation of someone else's dreams bleeding into mine. The transition from sleep to consciousness was gradual, like surfacing from deep water, but with it came fragments of experiences that weren't my own. I could taste something, sweet and floral, hear the sound of wind through crystalline chimes, feel the sensation of walking on grass that sang beneath bare feet. The memories faded as awareness took hold, leaving only the lingering impression of profound loneliness and a longing for something I couldn't name. The healing chamber had changed while I slept. Where before there had been only the bioresponsive bed and Nix's workstation, now there were additional alcoves glowing softly along the walls, each containing what appeared to be floating geometric shapes that pulsed with gentle light. The air itself seemed different, too charged with a subtle energy that made my skin tingle. "Good morning, Marcus." The voice wasn't Nix's. It was deeper, richer, with harmonics that seemed to resonate in my bones. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but your dreams were quite vivid last night." I turned toward the speaker and felt my breath catch. If Nix was moonlight on water, this new being was sunset through amber. Her skin held warm golden tones that seemed to shift between honey and copper, depending on how the light caught her. Her eyes were the deep green of Earth's forests, but with an intensity that suggested she could see far more than surface appearances. Unlike Nix's ethereal beauty, this woman, for lack of a better term, radiated a grounded presence that made the chamber feel more stable, more real. Her hair fell in waves of burnished bronze around her shoulders, and when she moved, it was with the confident grace of someone comfortable in their own skin. "Let me guess," I said, testing my voice and finding it stronger than before. "Another member of the medical team?" She smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly more pointed than human normal, but somehow perfectly suited to her face. "Memory archivist, actually. Zara Vethka, though you may call me Zara. I specialize in neural integration and consciousness mapping, which means I'm the one who helps beings like you make sense of what happens when two very different minds are forced to share space." She approached the bed with fluid movements that reminded me of a dancer or perhaps a predator, something graceful, but with underlying power. "The bonding process between you and Nyx has created some unexpected complications. I thought of the alien dreams I'd been experiencing, the flashes of emotion and memory that didn't belong to me. As shared experiences," she mentioned, "among other things." Zara gestured to one of the floating geometric shapes, which drifted closer in response. As it approached, it began to unfold like an origami flower made of light, reeling intricate patterns within patterns. "Your neural patterns are unusually receptive to our technology. Most beings experience minor empathic spillover during the healing process. You, however, are creating full sensory bridges. Is that bad?" "Not bad," she said, her green eyes studying the light patterns with professional interest, "but complex. Nyx is experiencing your memories and emotions with the same intensity that you're experiencing hers. It's creating a feedback loop that's affecting both of your psychological states." I watched as more of the geometric shapes began to unfold, filling the air around us with slowly rotating mandalas of light. They were beautiful, but there was something unsettling about the way they seemed to respond to my heartbeat, pulsing in rhythm with my internal systems. "What kind of psychological effects?" Zara's expression grew more serious. "Emotional amplification, memory blending. In some cases, temporary identity confusion." She waved her hand through one of the light patterns, causing it to shift color, from blue to deep purple. "Nyx has been experiencing your grief over your lost crewmates, as if it were her own loss. Meanwhile, you've been dreaming of experiences from her childhood on Nithros Prime. The loneliness I'd felt upon waking suddenly made sense. That's what I was experiencing this morning. Her memories. A particularly potent one, yes. The day she left her homeworld to begin her medical training. She was quite young, and the separation from her family was traumatic." Zara moved to another control surface that materialized from the wall at her touch. "But that's not the most concerning. Development." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What is?" "You're beginning to merge emotional contexts. Your feelings about your deceased crewmates are becoming entangled with her feelings about past patients she's lost. Her childhood loneliness is amplifying your own memories of isolation." The light patterns around us shifted to warmer colors as she spoke, as if responding to the emotional weight of her words. "If this continues unchecked, you could both lose yourselves in the other's experiences." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Not only was I dependent on alien technology to survive, but I was slowly losing my individual identity in the process. "How do we stop it?" "We don't stop it," Zara said, moving closer to the bed. "We learn to navigate it. The bonding process can't be reversed without killing you both at this stage. But it can be managed." "Managed how?" She gestured to the floating geometric shapes around us. "Memory work. Conscious integration. We help you understand which thoughts and feelings are yours and which belong to Nyx. We teach you to maintain your individual identity while still allowing the healing bond to function." I stared at the light patterns, watching them pulse and shift in response to my emotional state. "And this requires what, exactly?" "It requires me to go inside your mind," Zara said quietly. "Both of your minds, actually. I need to map your neural patterns, understand how the bonding has affected your consciousness, and help you build barriers between your individual identities. The thought of another alien presence in my head should have been terrifying. After everything that had happened with Nyx, I should have been protective of what little mental privacy I had left. Instead, I found myself curious about this golden-skinned woman who spoke of consciousness like others might discuss the weather. Is it dangerous? All growth involves risk, she replied, which wasn't exactly reassuring. But I've performed similar integrations hundreds of times. The process is intimate, but safe. Intimate how? Zara's expression softened slightly, and I caught a glimpse of something almost vulnerable in her forest green eyes. When I map your neural patterns, I experience everything you've experienced. Every memory, every emotion, every moment of joy or pain that's shaped who you are. It's the only way to understand how the bonding has affected your core identity. The idea of someone having that level of access to my inner self was both terrifying and oddly appealing. And you? What happens to you during this process? I remain myself, she said, but there was something in her voice that suggested it wasn't quite that simple. Though I do retain impressions of the consciousness I've mapped. Echoes, you might say. It's why memory archivists rarely perform more than a few dozen full integrations in their lifetime. Because it changes you. Because it enriches us, she corrected. Every consciousness I've helped integrate has left something behind. A perspective I didn't have before. A way of seeing the universe that expands my own understanding. She moved closer, and I could smell something like cinnamon and starlight on her skin. It's a privilege, actually, to be allowed that deep into another being's essential self. I thought about this for a moment, watching the way the light patterns around us had begun to sync with both of our heartbeats, creating complex interference patterns that were beautiful despite their alien nature. Where's Nyx? I asked suddenly, realizing I hadn't seen her since waking. Resting, Zara replied. The emotional spillover from your dreams was particularly intense last night. She experienced your nightmares about the crash as if she had been there herself. She needed time to separate her own experiences from yours. Guilt washed over me, sharp and immediate. Not only was I dependent on Nyx for survival, but my very presence was causing her psychological trauma. Is she all right? She will be, once we complete the integration work. Zara studied my expression with those penetrating green eyes. The guilt you're feeling right now? She's experiencing that too, along with self-recrimination for not being strong enough to handle the bonding effects. It's a feedback loop that will only get worse without intervention. The thought of Nyx blaming herself for something that was completely beyond her control made my chest tighten with protective anger. Then, let's do it. Whatever you need to do to help her, I'm willing. Something shifted in Zara's expression, a warmth that hadn't been there before. The willingness to sacrifice for someone you barely know. That's very human of you, Marcus, and very beautiful. I wouldn't call it beautiful, I said, though something in her tone made my pulse quicken. Just the right thing to do. In my experience, the right thing and the beautiful thing are often the same. She moved to the head of the bioresponsive bed, her hands hovering over controls I couldn't see. The process will take several hours. During that time, you'll experience a complete review of your life memories, but seen through the lens of how they've been affected by the bonding. It can be overwhelming. Will you be there? During the process, I mean. I'll be with you every step of the way, she said, and something in her voice made me believe it completely. When you're ready to begin, place your hand on mine. I looked up at her, this beautiful alien woman who was offering to carry the burden of my entire life's experiences in order to help me and Nyx. There was something about her presence that felt both ancient and eternal, as if she had been walking through the memories of others for so long that she had become a repository of universal experience. "One question first," I said. "What do you get out of this? What makes it worth the risk of taking on someone else's entire identity?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, her golden skin catching and reflecting the light from the floating geometric patterns around us. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but certain. "Connection," she said simply. "For beings like me, who spend their lives swimming in the consciousness of others, true connection is rare. Most of the time, I'm a visitor in someone else's experience. But during full integration, for just a few hours, I'm not alone in my own mind. I share not just memories, but the essential experience of being someone else. It's the closest thing to genuine intimacy that someone like me can have." The honesty in her admission took my breath away. Here was someone who had dedicated her life to helping others maintain their individual identities, while she herself lived in a kind of psychological isolation that I couldn't begin to imagine. "Zara," I said softly, and she looked up at me with those incredible green eyes. "Thank you for helping us, for being willing to take this on." She smiled then, and it transformed her entire face, making her look younger and somehow more vulnerable. "Thank you for trusting me with something so precious." I reached out and placed my hand over hers, feeling the warm strength of her alien fingers as they interlaced with mine. The geometric light patterns around us suddenly flared brighter, and I felt a gentle pressure at the edges of my consciousness as her presence touched the boundaries of my mind. "Close your eyes," she whispered, her voice taking on harmonics that seemed to resonate in my bones. "And let me show you who you really are." As consciousness faded and the integration began, I felt Zara's presence wrapping around my memories like warm silk, her mental voice a constant companion as we began the journey through the landscape of my life. For the first time since awakening on the alien station, I felt truly safe, held and protected by someone who understood exactly what it meant to lose yourself in another's experience. The last thing I remembered before diving deep into the integration was the sensation of Zara's surprise and delight as she encountered the core of my identity, and her whispered observation that human consciousness was far more beautiful than she had ever imagined. I emerged from the memory integration like a swimmer breaking the surface of a deep, still lake. The sensation was one of profound clarity, as if someone had cleaned windows I hadn't realized were dirty. My thoughts were my own again, distinct from Nix's, though I could still feel the healing bond humming quietly in the background of my consciousness. The chamber had transformed once more during my hours in integration, where before there had been sterile medical surfaces and floating geometric patterns, now living walls curved around us, covered in what appeared to be flowering vines that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. The air smelled of growing things, earth, and rain, and something sweeter that reminded me of jasmine. "Welcome back," said a voice like rustling leaves. "I hope you don't mind the changes. Your dreams during integration were full of green growing things, and the chamber's biosystems responded to your subconscious desires." I turned toward the speaker and found myself looking at perhaps the most unusual being I'd encountered yet. She was tall and willowy, with skin that held the deep green patina of copper, touched by centuries of weather. Her hair moved like kelp in an underwater current, each strand seeming to have a life of its own, and when she shifted position, I could swear I heard the subtle sound of wind through branches, but it was her eyes that captured my attention. Not eyes at all, but clusters of tiny lights like bioluminescent flowers, beautiful and alien in a way that made my breath catch. When she smiled, the lights brightened and seemed to dance. "I'm Vera," she said, moving toward me with a gait that reminded me of a tree swaying in a gentle breeze. "I tend the biogardens aboard Serenity's Edge. Zara thought you might benefit from some time in a more natural environment during your continued recovery." I sat up slowly, testing my improved motor function. The integration had done more than clarify my thoughts. My body felt stronger, more coordinated. The alien technology within me was working. In harmony now rather than feeling like a foreign presence. "Where are Nix and Zara?" "Resting," Vera replied, settling onto what appeared to be a chair that had grown from the living wall behind her. "The integration process was intense for all three of you. They'll recover quickly, but they need time to process what they experienced." I looked around the transformed chamber, noting the way the bioluminescent plants seemed to respond to my presence, brightening slightly when I focused on them. "And you? Are you here to continue my treatment?" "In a sense." Vera gestured to the walls around us, and I watched in amazement as new flowering vines unfurled in response to her movement. Physical healing is only part of recovery from trauma. Your body is mending well, but your spirit, that requires a different kind of care. My spirit? The part of you that finds joy in simple beauty. The aspect of human consciousness that seeks connection with living things. Her flower-light eyes fixed on me with an intensity that was somehow both penetrating and gentle. "During your integration, I observed your memory patterns. You're someone who draws strength from nature, from growing things. The sterile medical environment, necessary as it was, has been slowly draining that part of your essence." As she spoke, I realized she was right. The constant artificial lighting, the absence of any natural rhythms, the complete separation from anything alive and growing, it had all been wearing on me in ways I hadn't consciously recognized. "So you've turned my hospital room into a garden?" "I've allowed the chamber's biosystems to respond to your subconscious needs," she corrected, though her tone was warm with what might have been amusement. "The healing station is a living entity, Marcus. Its walls, its atmosphere, its very structure are grown from specialized organisms that respond to the emotional and psychological states of their inhabitants. It's been trying to help you heal in ways beyond the merely physical." I looked at the flowering vines with new appreciation. "The station is alive, alive and aware, though not sentient in the way you might understand. Think of it as a vast symbiotic organism dedicated to healing and nurture." Vera rose from her living chair and approached one of the walls, her hand pressing against the surface. Where she touched, new blooms unfurled, releasing a fragrance that made me think of spring mornings and fresh rain. "The station responds to the biosignatures of its inhabitants. When you dream of Earth's forests, it tries to recreate those conditions. When you feel isolated, it grows connection pathways. Notice how the vines link everything together now? When you need comfort, it adjusts temperature, humidity, even the spectrum of light to match your body's requirements." "It's beautiful," I said, and meant it. For the first time since awakening on the station, I felt truly at peace. A constant low-level anxiety I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying began to dissipate. "Would you like to see more?" Vera asked. "The biogardens are extensive, and movement will help your continued physical recovery." I stood carefully, pleased to find my legs steady and strong. "Lead the way." The corridor that opened at Vera's approach was unlike anything I could have imagined. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all composed of living matter, not wood or any plant material I recognized, but something that seemed to blend the best qualities of both. Bioluminescent flowers provided gentle lighting, while larger blooms released periodic puffs of fragrant air that made breathing a pleasure rather than a necessity. "This is incredible," I said as we walked. "How long did it take to grow all this?" "Time moves differently for living systems," Vera replied, her hand trailing along the wall as we moved. Where she touched, new patterns of light followed in her wake. Some of these passages have been growing for centuries, while others respond to immediate needs. The station learns and adapts constantly. We passed through an archway into a vast chamber that took my breath away. It was a garden in the truest sense trees. It soared toward a transparent ceiling, showing the starfield beyond. Flowers of every conceivable color, and some that seemed to shift through spectrums I couldn't name, streams of what appeared to be liquid light flowing between raised beds of growing things that defied botanical classification. "Welcome to the heart of Serenity's Edge," Vera said, her flower-light eyes brightening with obvious pride. "This is where the station's consciousness is centered, where all the healing energy originates." I walked among the impossible plants, marveling at flowers that chimed like bells when the light streams touched them, trees whose leaves whispered secrets in languages I couldn't understand, but somehow found comforting, ground cover that cushioned each step and seemed to massage tired muscles through the soles of my feet. "Vera," I said, stopping beside a tree whose bark showed spiral patterns that reminded me of galaxies. "Why are you showing me this? Not that I'm not grateful, but what does this have to do with my recovery?" She moved to stand beside me, her unusual eyes studying the tree's patterns. "Because healing isn't just about repairing what's broken. It's about helping someone remember who they are beneath the trauma, the loss, the disruption of everything they thought they knew about their life." Her words hit me with unexpected force. Since awakening on the station, I'd been focused entirely on the physical aspects of my recovery, on understanding the alien technology keeping me alive. I hadn't allowed myself to process the deeper implications of what had happened to me. "I lost everything," I said quietly. "My crewmates, my ship, my entire life, really. Even if I recover completely, I can't go back to being who I was before." "No," Vera agreed, her voice gentle but firm. "But you can choose who you become next." She moved to another plant, this one resembling a flowering bush whose blooms seemed to contain miniature starfields. As she approached, the flowers began to sing not with voices, but with harmonics that spoke directly to something deep in my chest. "Every being who comes here for healing faces the same choice," she continued. "They can focus on what they've lost, remaining trapped in grief and regret. Or they can open themselves to new possibilities, new forms of beauty, new ways of being in the universe." I listened to the starflowers sing, feeling something tight and painful in my chest beginning to loosen. "And what if someone isn't ready to make that choice? Then we wait," Vera said simply. "The garden is patient. It will support you through whatever process you need, for as long as you need." We continued walking among the impossible plants, and I found myself sharing stories I hadn't thought about in years, memories of the small garden my grandmother had kept behind her house, of hiking trails on Earth where I'd found peace during difficult times, of the moment during our research mission when I'd first seen an alien sunrise and felt the universe expand around me. Vera listened with complete attention, occasionally touching a plant that would respond to whatever emotion I was expressing, flowers blooming more brightly during happy memories, leaves rustling with sympathetic sadness during painful ones, musical chimes providing gentle harmony to everything I shared. "The plants are responding to me," I realized after a while. "They're responding to the truth you're sharing," Vera corrected. "Living systems recognize authenticity. They can sense when someone is being genuine about their inner experience." We had arrived at a quiet grove where trees with silver trunks formed a natural circle around a pool of liquid light. The space felt sacred somehow, charged with a peaceful energy that made me want to sit and simply exist for a while. "Vera," I said as we settled onto moss-covered stones beside the light pool, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. How did you end up here, working on a healing station in deep space?" Her flower-light eyes dimmed slightly, and for a moment she seemed very far away. "I was a refugee once, fleeing a world that had been ravaged by industrial development. My people, the Verdani, are symbiotic with plant life. When our homeworld's ecosystems collapsed, most of us died with them. The casual way she mentioned planetary genocide made my heart ache. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up painful memories. Pain shared is pain diminished, she said, touching the surface of the light pool. Where her fingers made contact, ripples of color spread across the luminous liquid. I came here because Serenity's Edge offered something my dead world couldn't, the chance to help other traumatized beings find new ways to grow. And have you found new ways to grow? She smiled then, and the entire grove seemed to brighten. In response, every day, every being I help heal teaches me something new about resilience, about the endless capacity for life to adapt and flourish even in the most unlikely circumstances. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the patterns play across the light pool's surface. I found myself thinking about choices, about the path that had led me to this impossible garden, and the woman beside me whose very existence was a testament to survival and renewal. Vera, I said finally, when you look at the plants here, what do you see? I see possibilities, she replied without hesitation. Each plant represents a choice to grow toward light, to send roots deeper into nourishing soil, to bloom despite adverse conditions. They're all teachers, really, showing us how to thrive rather than merely survive. And when you look at me, she turned those extraordinary eyes on me, and I felt seen in a way that was both intimate and completely safe. I see someone standing at a crossroads, someone who has the opportunity to become something entirely new, if he's brave enough to. Let go of who he used to be. The truth of her words settled into my bones like sunlight soaking into earth. I was at a crossroads, though I'd been too focused on immediate survival to realize it. The life I'd known was over, but that didn't mean my story had to end. What? If I wanted to learn more? I asked. About this place, about plant symbiosis, about healing through connection with living systems? The garden would welcome you, Vera said, her entire being seeming to glow with pleasure at the suggestion. There's always room for someone who wants to tend growing things. Even a human? Even someone who needs alien technology to stay alive? Especially someone like that, she replied. The best healers are those who have experienced their own need for healing. The most nurturing gardeners are those who understand what it means to be replanted in foreign soil. As if in response to our conversation, the grove around us erupted in a symphony of gentle sounds, leaves rustling, flowers chiming, water trickling, and underneath it all, a deep harmonic that seemed to come from the station itself. It felt like approval, like welcome, like the universe itself, saying yes to possibilities I hadn't dared imagine. Thank you, I said to Vera, meaning it more deeply than she could probably understand, for showing me this, for helping me remember that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. Thank you for being open to growth, she replied. Many beings resist change, even when it might lead to something beautiful. We made our way back through the garden slowly, and I found myself paying attention to details I'd missed during our initial journey. The way different plants seemed to be in constant communication through networks of light and scent. The manner in which the station's consciousness expressed itself through subtle adjustments to atmosphere and ambience. The incredible complexity of a living system dedicated entirely to nurture and healing. When we reached the transformed medical chamber, I turned back to Vera one more time. Will I see you again? I mean, is this part of my ongoing treatment? Or, growth is an ongoing process, she said with gentle amusement. And gardeners tend to check on their plantings regularly. Yes, Marcus, you'll see me again. As she departed, through a doorway that sealed itself behind her with living tissue, I settled back onto the bioresponsive bed and looked around at the flowering walls she had helped create. For the first time since my rescue, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. I was no longer the same person who had been aboard the Meridian. That man was gone, along with the life he'd known. But in his place was someone new, someone who had been given the incredible gift of a second chance and the wisdom to recognize it for what it was. Outside the transparent ceiling, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, but I no longer felt lost among them. I was exactly where I needed to be, tended by beings who understood that healing was about more than mere survival. It was about learning to bloom again, even in the vast garden of space. As sleep began to claim me, surrounded by the gentle bioluminescence of Vera's living walls and the quiet hum of the healing bond that connected me to Nyx, I found myself looking forward to tomorrow in a way I hadn't since before the crash. There were still challenges ahead, still healing to be done, but for the first time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The garden had taught me its most important lesson. Sometimes the most beautiful growth comes from the deepest transplanting, and I was finally ready to put down new roots.